Who up switching they stance? Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of Switching Stances, episode 3. Today we're going to be talking about the Fiziev versus Manuel Torres card, which I thought was pretty good, surprisingly. It was one of those cards that look not great on paper, and then the things that you're looking forward to exceed your expectations. Like we'll talk about fucking Asuama Bayev later, but what a performance from that fella. And then Fiziev also did great. And then the stuff that you're not really, you don't really know much about, just delivers in different ways. You either get these new interesting fighters that come onto your radar, or there's just quick finishes, and you're like, oh, that was enjoyable. I said at the end of last episode that I didn't know a thing about Torres and that I'd go away and watch it. And I watched all of his fights in about half an hour because they all end in the first round, whether he wins or loses. And I don't often bet on fights, but I did with this one because the man gets hurt all the time, just like swinging the stupidest haymakers the world has ever seen and like stumbling over his feet, way out of stance. The Bahamondes fight, he gets clipped like 3 times because he throws this massive overhand, sort of trips over his own feet, and Bahamondes just slides out the way and catches him with something. And you're going, do I trust Fiziev to do that? Do I trust Fiziev to like survive the stuff that Manuel Torres is capable of throwing at him and then catch him with something back? So I bet on a knockout in the first 3 rounds, and that hit, obviously. Fiziev just like one-banged him with a spinning head kick, which was beautiful. A lot of people talking about the way the impact landed. Fiziev caught him with Torres' hand up, blocking his head. It like hit the block and still sent Torres reeling to the ground. And the reason for that, obviously, everyone's talking about it, is the fact that Torres' feet were just nowhere. He was like skipping backwards, sort of tripping over his feet as per. No position to take the shot, so just gets bowled over by the force of it. And then Fiziev gets that position on him, where the guy's a little bit stunned, a little bit dazed. Probably not going to go out from that. But you completely give yourself away defensively and let this guy, who is a quick little hooker, body hooks into head hooks, is like basically all he does punching wise. And you let this guy get on you against the fence. And that's actually what failed Torres. Other than the finish itself, it was the usual sort of Fiziev look. A little bit more aggressive than he normally is. He's normally very, I'm doing nothing until I'm doing something. This one, he was doing a lot of fake entries. He likes to get in with his head movement and then hit the body. And he was doing a lot of that head movement, but just coming in and out and trying to get Torres to swing like an idiot, throw himself out of position or gas himself out, and then come back in and, kick his legs, whatever it may be. You also saw Fiziev kicking with his hands glued to his head a lot of the time, not doing that typical swing through. The reason being, obviously, that Torres was trying to hit him every time he kept his hands up. And to be fair, Torres dropped him regardless. Fiziev still had his hands glued to his head, and Torres throws this big right hand and, at the very least, knocks Fiziev off balance. I'm not overly convinced that it was a knockdown by the usual definitions, but it knocked Fiziev down for a second and he had to scramble up to his feet. I just don't think he was dazed. I think he just caught off balance and his guard absorbed the punch. Fiziev also clearly keen to take this guy down, which is sort of a new element to his game. Over the last couple of fights, he's been really good on just running in with this like sort of sprinting double leg. As soon as he catches it, he just bowls people over with it. Clearly got some power behind it. But Torres, quite good at nullifying that with the leg entanglement, just turns Fiziev away and hops back up to his feet. Obviously wasn't particularly interested in engaging there. Positives for Torres really were when he wasn't just throwing silly hands. I really liked his jab. It's the first time I think we've really seen him have an idea of a jab. I would have liked more jabbing and less swinging. I'm not sure that's ever something he's going to do. It seems like he's a born and bred swinger, but his jab was really nice and obviously hurt Fiziev. I also really like from Torres that he kicks and then throws his left hook after it. He often does like a right kick, like a right low kick or a right body kick, to get his guy coming into him, and then he'll sort of pull his leg back into that left hook, which is something that Alex Pereira does a lot. And he did it a lot in his kickboxing days as well. I think it was when he won his light heavyweight title. He basically did it off of that combination. And it's something Torres does a lot. I'm not sure he's particularly landed anything significant off it yet, but it's a really nice little bit of technique in amongst a guy who is a little bit void of a lot of that stuff. You know, he is a Diego Lopez without the Diego Lopez chin, which is a real shame because the Diego Lopez chin is essential to making the Diego Lopez style work. You know, if you're just going to swing for the fences a lot of the time, then you need to be able to hang in there. And Torres has shown, unfortunately, that he can't always hang in there. So it makes his style a little bit of a, not a glass cannon, maybe more of a tin cannon. So next for the both of them, next for Fiziev, I'd really like to see that Gamrot fight again, because we just didn't see it the first time. It was over due to an injury, Fiziev separating his own leg. It's not like it's an injury that Gamrot caused. As is a lot of Gamrot fights, the guy just sort of implodes and gifts Gamrot a win. So I'd really like to see Fiziev run that one back. I think it's a fight he probably wins, but it's also a really good opportunity for Gamrot to impress as well. Like, that's a style that should be tricky for him, and I would really enjoy seeing him wear down a guy like Fiziev if he can survive on the feet and consistently get him down and control him. On Torres' part, he probably has to defend that spot now. He's only number 15, so I think it's probably time to fight someone who wants to come up. I think he's good enough to be in the top 15. I do. Like, I appreciate I've been quite critical of him in this episode, but I do think he's good. He's just not... He's not going to beat guys like Fiziev, I don't think, unless he starts playing with the sliders a little bit and dialing back the swinging until it's really important and getting a little bit more behind the jab, which I fucking loved. Which is something you've seen a bit more from Lopez, him playing with the sliders a little bit, to his detriment against Garcia, but it's a nice idea. Shara Bullet versus Michel Pereira was miserable. I really don't like it. They fight like people who don't watch fighting think fighters should fight like. They are just kicks with no setup, and Shara Bullet at least has a little bit of setup and a little bit of finesse, and there's some sneakiness to what he does. But it is still just sort of circling the cage for 20 seconds and then throwing like a body kick and then a body kick off the other side and then circling the cage for a little bit and then stepping up into a side kick and then circling the cage for a little bit. And it's quite a... It doesn't move me at all. Especially when you're going against another guy who is just like all kicks and wacky shit. Bisping at the start of the fight was like, oh, Shara Bullet definitely is the far superior striker. And then Bullet immediately gets blasted off his feet by this right hand. And then Pereira just can't capture that moment again. And so they both just look like they don't want to commit to anything. They sort of go towards one another and threaten to do something and then circle away from each other again until they meet and threaten to do something and circle away from each other again. And it's just a nightmare of a fight. Pereira starts sort of trying to walk forward towards Bullet, and Bullet will just do these little side kicks as soon as Pereira squares up and punts him back. But otherwise, there wasn't a lot that captured my my love of MMA in there. It was just these guys doing kicks with no intrigue or narrative to it. Just a dull, miserable fight. Not got much to say about Sadikov versus Camilo because it was just an insta-kill. Like, he just got hit with the straight right down the pipe and fell to the floor and got hit. And it was a fine stoppage. He was complaining about the stoppage, but he slumped to the ground on the 2-3 and then didn't move for a bit. So, absolutely fine stoppage. It's kind of absurd to argue otherwise, I think. Asu Almabayev versus Charles Johnson, though, was absolutely wonderful. Great performance from Almabayev, although Johnson handed him everything on a platter. Obviously, Johnson was coming in going, I'm going to be a little hummingbird. I'm going to dart around and jab and move and kick and move and do lots of these little things where I'm kicking Almabayev and then I'm moving away and he just can't get in on me. And when he does get in on me, I'm going to sling a knee at him. The issue being that Almabayev had clearly spent the entire camp preparing for that and was so dialed in on just catching every single thing that Johnson threw at him. And Johnson got close on a couple of knees a couple of times. It got a little bit dangerous for Almabayev, but he never landed it particularly. I don't think he ever landed it to the head, at the very least. And then Almabayev would just pick it up and bowl him over with either a tree top or he'd sort of slump to his knees on a single, that sort of stuff. And then Johnson would just be put into scrambling hell with this little guy who could just adjust to every single thing he did. In particular, Johnson was doing a lot of butterfly hooks. He'd sort of try and get some overhooks, catch Almabayev, and then try and work some butterfly hooks. But swing him over to one side and reverse him and scramble to his feet. But Almabayev, if he did get reversed, he would very quickly stay on. He'd try and sort of catch a leg as he's going and stay on Johnson. And a lot of the time, he didn't let himself get reversed because he'd sort of Superman across Johnson. He'd really just collapse his base and give Johnson nothing to hook onto and just keep himself heavy and low and not allow him to be turned in that way. At certain points, Johnson would duck his head while punching, and Almabayev would seize the opportunity and just grab a front headlock and sprawl to his knees and keep Johnson on the floor from there. Almabayev also tried the Jones-Garn guillotine on the fence where Johnson was sort of sitting with his back to the cage, and Almabayev would try and guillotine him there, just like John Jones did to Cyril Garn, to great effect. Almabayev wasn't as effective with it. Johnson was very good at pulling down on the grip and sneaking his shoulder in there to completely break it. But once he got to his feet and he kept his hands on the grip where he was pulling down, and he sort of looped it off his head and started pushing it to the side of his body so that he could sneak out, so that the grip was completely gone and he could just zip out. And as he was moving it, Almabayev opened up his hands and reconnected them around Johnson's leg to hook a single, which I thought was so cool. And then once he had Johnson's back, Almabayev hit the typical, the Sulev stretch that you always see once every 3-4 years, which is where one guy is quad-podding, so they're sort of all four limbs on the floor, and they're trying to sort of shimmy the guy off the front of their body, sort of shaking their ass, sort of twerking to try and slide the guy down the top of their body. And Almabayev hooked one of the legs, the sort of far side leg, the opposite one in the direction he was falling, and hooks the leg, rolls Johnson, squeezes it a bit, and then he starts working his way up to the foot, where obviously you have a longer lever, more leverage. Rolls Johnson to his back so that he's sort of staring at the sky with his leg over his head, and taps him. Beautiful, beautiful submission. Just awesome stuff. And it's so cool because you see it so rarely. And if we're talking about long levers being able to create more leverage, if you look at Johnson, he is all lever at flyweight. He has long arms, long legs. So those sorts of joint extension submissions are going to be a danger for him. Next for Almabayev, I'd really like to see him and Tatsuro Taira go at it, which is another, long guy versus short guy matchup. I think isn't Almabayev the shortest guy on the roster? Am I right in saying? I might be wrong, but I think he is. And then obviously Taira is a massive featherweight. But they're both grapplers, so it'd be really interesting to see that matchup play out. Next for Johnson, probably just defending his spot against someone who's on the rise at flyweight at the moment. Maybe Kevin Borges, someone like that. I don't know. Who's on the rise at flyweight at the moment? I can't pull anyone to mind, but I think Johnson will be defending against someone rather than fighting up anytime soon. Ikram Aliskerov pulled off, I think, the kind of performance that Johnson was trying to do against Almabayev. A lot of jabs, the odd teep, body jabs, those sorts of not particularly committal weapons, lots of low kicks, just keeping Ferreira on the end of his range, keeping him honest. And then when Ferreira tried to push in a little bit, tried to get a little bit too smart by half, then Aliskerov would uppercut him or knee him. That was the crucial sort of a 1-2 lead knee was really lovely early on. The lead knee, the lead knee first, and then it was the 1-2. It was the lead knee as Ferreira committed to coming in, and then the 1-2 as Ferreira exited, which was lovely. A lovely bit of interplay between short and long weapons. And then you also had, in the later half of the fight, you had Aliskerov jabbing, just popping out these jabs, getting Ferreira to move his head to come in, and as Ferreira slipped inside the jab, Aliskerov came in with the uppercut and clipped him as well. And then the more obvious stuff was just lots of these sort of bicycle flying knees. I think Jack Slack calls it the Groenhart knee. So he'd jump in with this double flying knee, get Ferreira to lift his hands up, block his head, and then come in with the takedown afterwards. I think Bo Nickel did something similar on the Contender Series, where he'd fly up in the air with his knee and then go to his knees on a takedown afterwards. Aliskerov playing with the similar ideas, jumping in the air, making Ferreira block high, and then getting in on the waist. And it meant that Ferreira never got underhooks. He just got this overhook sort of body lock thing, and then was able to sort of retain some sort of guard, but completely unable to actually defend the shot in the first place. Standout with Aliskerov's grappling was his body triangle, I think, in the third round, which was beautiful. You saw Ferreira do a whole 360 rotation in it. You know, it starts off on the back and he turns into his belly and then goes back and gives up his back again. Able to turn the whole way through, but at no point is he able to roll Aliskerov off him or put pressure on that body triangle in any way that makes Aliskerov uncomfortable. Aliskerov just so able to squeeze the body, upset him with that body triangle. It was really nice. And when Ferreira went belly down with it, Aliskerov was quite good at just landing hooks, landing these elbows, keeping Ferreira never particularly close to being finished, but obviously on a damaging loss, which is nice to see from MMA grappling, because you don't always see that. We'll talk about that later. I never really find myself particularly inspired by Aliskerov. I don't know what it is. There's just never been something about his performances that click with me, but I'd like to see him get another shot at the rankings. He seems obviously good enough to be in that spot. I'm not really sure why they've not let him be ranked or, you know, pushed him into that sort of fight since the Robert Whittaker loss, or the Robert Whittaker squashing, I suppose it was, really. So yeah, let's get him against sort of a top 15 middleweight. I'd be interested to see it. Abus Magomedov had a blinder, which I'm not sure you could ever really have said about Abus Magomedov in the past. I mean, he had that great debut, but I think after the Sean Strickland destruction, implosion, and the sort of subsequent fights where he's gassed out really badly and all of that, he's been a bit of a tainted apple. He's always looked a little bit like, or at least I've always looked at him with some skepticism. So I'm not sure what the last Magomedov fight I watched was, but he looked awesome in this one. Lovely step and elbow, just hits the perfect angle on Alexichuk, drops him, and then guillotines him instantly as Alexichuk tries to wrestle up. Just beautiful stuff. We've had a couple now of guys getting stunned, trying to wrestle up on a single and getting guillotined really nicely. Because it happened on this one, and it also happened on the last one with C-Rod. So, nice little through line there. Hasanov versus Eric Nolan is the one that I referenced earlier when I said that we talk about no damage grappling in MMA, because this was lame, I thought. I'm a new hater of Hasanov. Did not like this performance at all. I started off liking it. I'm a guy that doesn't mind a bit of scrambly grappling, as long as you're able to keep adjusting to what the guy's throwing at you. I think it's okay. I think it's fine to just have a performance where you are consistently out-grappling a guy, keeping him moving, keeping him working. And just I quite like how Marab fights, for example. He has a lot of that. Guys like Movzar as well, I find him quite entertaining, despite nobody else finding him entertaining. I quite like his style of scrambly grappling. That sort of stuff I think is really cool. I mean, I've adored Johnson versus Almabayev, and it was like 90% these guys just adjusting to what each other throws up, and one guy getting the better of it. But then you have these long sequences where Hasanov is on top of Nolan in some way, and he's just doing nothing. He's just waiting for Nolan to give him something that he can adjust. It's just this fear of letting go of a little bit of control and letting your guy up. And it just sucks. It just turns these cool grapplers into guys who get their preferred phase of the fight and will not let it go, and it just ruins the whole fucking thing. Yakiai versus Walker was just an instant kill. Not a whole lot to say about that one. It was literally the first punch he threw. I think it was just a cross counter, lazy jab. Yakiai just lowers his base, fires the cross counter, and it's over. And what more can you say about that? It wasn't particularly. I don't think it was something he read. I think he just probably has drilled the cross counter a lot and got quite used to it. Ruzaboyev versus Yakiaev was awesome. Cool to see a guy finish a rear naked choke when the guy is one of the defenses you hear a lot for a rear naked choke, or a way to buy yourself time at least, is to turn into the choke. So sort of turn and try and look up at the top arm, the choking arm, and you saw here Ruzaboyev get the choke nonetheless as the guy is trying to turn into him to look at him. It just cuts off that blood flow on the neck, and there's this wonderful image of Ruzaboyev coming up whilst Yakiaev is sort of cross-eyed, staring at the sky. Wicked performance from Genghis Khan Offley, really cool. Just great short guy stuff, lots of buddy punching, some nice inside low kicks. Catching the tall guy for running in with his hands down. Lands a lovely left hook as Reyes comes sort of blitzing in a bit sloppily. And then he catches Reyes with a 3-2 as Reyes is leaning back looking to counter. Throws everything he has at Reyes, and as the guy is pushing away, trying to frame away, he leaves his arms out there. Offley takes the arm triangle and taps him out like that. Does it without having to pass, keeps his leg across. Lovely, lovely stuff. I will be keeping an eye on him because I think he's really cool. And then Donchenko versus Begrin as well, I thought was awesome. I really like Donchenko. I think he does a lot of cool stuff. A lot of head movement, a lot of tricky striking stuff. The sort of step in rear knee, switch through to southpaw to land the southpaw right hook. Using the dip right to either throw. So he'd dip out to his right and throw these right hands, and then he'd switch that up to an uppercut to the body as well. A lot of low kicks when Begrin would reset after a kick. He'd sort of plant his foot down, and then Donchenko would kick it, which is sick. He also does the same throwing his right hand in the air and then teeping that Yuri Prochazka does, which is pretty fun. Gets it done with the open side head kick, follows in with some swarming hooks. Just cool. Just a cool, violent... Is he welterweight? That's the vibe. Welterweight, yeah. Just a cool, violent welterweight. I'm not convinced he's going to be like the next, contender prospects even, really, but I'm interested in him. I think he's cool, awesome action fighter. Really, really enjoyed him. So I'll be keeping an eye on Donchenko as well. I couldn't watch the first two prelims because HBO didn't save them for whatever reason. So they are lost to me forever, unfortunately. If they are any good, let me know. I'll try and track them down on Fight Pass when they get uploaded. But I don't imagine I'm missing a whole lot. That's it from me. There's nothing to look forward to next week, so I won't do a podcast next week. We are taking a week off in anticipation of Conor McGregor versus Max Holloway, which will be great fun. I'm not particularly keen on McGregor fighting, given the court case, the court case for rape that he's been involved in as of late. But I am excited because it's Max Holloway main event, 5 rounds. Well, you know what? It'll be fun. They've also done us the rare honour of stacking a McGregor card. I'm not sure if they're not convinced he's going to sell it anymore, but it's a really good card as well, so we'll have lots of fun with that. But I'm going to spend the week writing about Robert Whittaker because I started writing something about Robert Whittaker and his sort of pre-Adesanya rematch fights. Those fights against Darren Till, Jared Cannonier, and Kelvin Gastelum. And I started writing this in anticipation of Robert Whittaker headlining a fight night or being sort of relevant on the main card of something. But no, they've put him on the prelims of this McGregor card. So not only is it going to get buried by him being on the prelims, it's also going to get buried by the shadow of McGregor looming over him. But I hope he does well. I hope he gets some nice Rob Whittaker stuff. I'll be releasing the article regardless because I've half written it at this point, so I might as well finish it. So that'll be up. I'll be plugging that next time. Go give it a read if it's out and you're listening in the past. Much love, take care, and we'll catch you in 2 weeks.